Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss any update from Rouse IAS Study Circle. Join the only official Telegram channel of Rouse IAS Study Circle to get the relevant materials and important updates. Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, the platform where we analyze the Hindu newspaper on daily basis from all the possible dimensions which is relevant from the UPSC Civil Service Examinations perspective. So today we are going to discuss the Hindu Delhi edition dated 16th June 2022. The topics to be discussed have been displayed on your screen and a timestamping on the same has been provided in the description box below.
Dear UPSC aspirant, you must be aware of the fact that selection of right optional is very important from the perspective of getting top ranks. And if you're feeling confused about which optional to choose, then we have a solution for you. You can actually meet and interact with Rouse IAS optional educators so that you can get complete clarity in terms of which optional to choose, how you're going to approach it, and how the teachers are going to help you in terms of developing a holistic approach in this particular perspective. Now, the optional counseling session will be conducted in two centers. First is, of course, Bengaluru, where we'll be conducting optional counseling session for sociology and history on 17th from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and for public administration and geography from 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Now, in this session, you can actually attend the session, interact with the teacher, and can understand how the teachers are going to help you in terms of solving your problems and giving you the best output that you are expecting from the coming attempt at the UPSC examination. Optional counseling session for our Delhi centers will be conducted on 18th and 19th, and these will be conducted for 8 different subjects. On 18th, we'll be conducting the optional counseling for sociology and public administration from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and for psychology and history from 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. On 19th of July, we'll be conducting the optional counseling for anthropology and PSIR from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and for geography and economics from 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. So if in case you haven't finalized your optional so far, or you want to understand more about the subject, then you can interact with teachers of Rouse IAS and can develop complete clarity. You might also be confused between two optionals, so you can actually interact with the teachers of both the subject and can understand which one will fit your bill perfectly. Here you are going to interact, you will also understand how teachers basically teach and how they will be helping you in terms of hand-holding you in this entire journey and become more and more proficient in terms of taking the optional in the right perspective. Try to understand that when you talk about the optional, it is a journey that matters, and journey matters when you have the right guide. So the teachers of Rouse IAS are going to be your best guide in this entire process.
In continuation with our weekly mains answer writing practice sessions, this is today's question in front of you. Prison reforms in India is still a neglected topic. According to you, what might be the reasons for this? Also suggest the measures to reform Indian prisons. You have to answer this particular question in 250 words on our eLearn platform and get it evaluated by our experts. Our first topic of discussion is in relation to the India-Sri Lanka international relations. This topic reads, in Sri Lankan crisis, a window of economic opportunity. This topic has appeared at page number 8 in today's The Hindu Delhi edition. And as we all know, in the backdrop of economic crisis which Sri Lanka is going through, this article talks about the potential of India-Sri Lanka economic relationships, which can not only make Sri Lanka to come out of its economic crisis, but also will build the foundation of India-Sri Lanka economic relationships for coming years. As far as the UPSC scheme of syllabus is concerned, this topic falls under paper 2, General Studies Mains paper 2 in the section of International Relations and the micro section of India and its neighborhood relations. Further, the question in this context was asked in UPSC 2013, which read that in respect of India-Sri Lanka relations, discuss how the domestic factors influence the foreign policy. In order to answer this particular question, you need to be aware about the cultural as well as socio-economic foundations and historical linkages of India and Sri Lanka. Nevertheless, as far as this particular article is concerned, this article talks about the economic opportunity which is lying ahead for India as well as Sri Lanka. The latest context of this very article is that Prime Minister of Sri Lanka has pointed out towards making an economic sub-region consisting of India and Sri Lanka. According to him, and as we all know, that our southern states, that is Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra, Karnataka, as well as Telangana, has a lot of socio-cultural similarity with Sri Lanka. Moreover, as far as the data is concerned, the combined sub-region, that is the southern Indian states as well as Sri Lanka, commands presently $500 billion of economy. Plus, it has around 400 million strong population base, which can serve as a huge market for both these countries. The Prime Minister further not only restricted to India and Sri Lanka as a components of this sub-region, he also pointed out towards a tri-nation economic convergence taking Singapore along with India and Sri Lanka. Doing this will not only bring us the economic benefits but will also strengthen the strategic benefits for all these countries. As we all know that these are the countries which lie in the Indian Ocean, which is of huge strategic as well as geopolitical significance. In this very context, we should be aware about what are the various potential of India and Sri Lanka's relationship and what are the concerns which can hinder this relationship. And this is the main theme of today's session. First of all, we will look at some of the potential merits of India-Sri Lanka sub-region. First and the foremost point is, as we have already discussed, that the southern states as well as Sri Lanka share a common culture. There is a Tamil bond which is shared between those states and Sri Lanka. A huge people-to-people contact can serve as a strong foundation for any economic relationship in international relations. The second important point is that there have been several instances where mutual support has existed between India and Sri Lanka. In recent times, as we all know that Sri Lanka is going through economic turmoil, India as well as specific state Tamil Nadu has extended economic aid to Sri Lanka. Further, we have also helped Sri Lanka to combat the terrorist as well as the civil rebellion which took place inside Sri Lanka. Next, India also has its neighborhood first policy whereby it focuses more on its immediate neighbors. And Sri Lanka is one of those neighbors whereby not only economic but all the aspects of international relations are focused. And in this very regard, India and Sri Lanka support each others at several economic fronts. Next comes the Indian Ocean bond. As both of these countries lie in Indian Ocean, and Indian Ocean today has become one of the most strategically significant areas across the world. Now, Indian Ocean commands one of the largest oil trades. Further, Indian Ocean also faces several challenges like maritime piracy, drugs peddling, as well as disasters. In this very regard, it is very important that all the countries of Indian Ocean come together. And in this very context, India and Sri Lanka relationship is very significant. Further, as far as other economic or regional groupings are concerned, India and Sri Lanka are part of several groupings. For example, SAARC as well as BIMSTEC. These regional groupings are very important to build the regional peace across this particular region. And because India and Sri Lanka are already the members of these groupings, it is very important for us to understand that Indo-Sri Lanka relationship will not only benefit these two countries but will also help the strengthening of these regional groupings as well. Next comes the immediate economic support which India has lent to Sri Lanka. It is a short-term line of credit facilities worth $55 million which was extended to Sri Lanka. And in the last, we all know from ancient times India and Sri Lanka share common Buddhist link. These common cultural heritage are of very much significance when it comes to the international relations, because international relations are not built on just the political foundations but more importantly it is also built on people to people reborn. But despite all these advantages which India and Sri Lanka shares, there are several concerns also, and these issues hinder the potential of this relationship. The first and the foremost issue is the apprehensions regarding the big brother image of India. And this is true not only in context of Sri Lanka, but it is also true in context of other neighboring countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan as well. Now, because on all these three fronts, that is military, economy, as well as polity, India is by far the major dominant player of this South Asian region. That is why several political analysts of the neighboring countries believe that if these countries grow closer ties with India, there are high chances that interests of India will be preserved at the cost of the interests of these countries. Because by this very logic, India will have a upper hand in negotiations, and that is why India will downturn the important demands of these countries. The second important concern in this regard is also the cultural apprehensions. For example, certain sections of Sinhalese group in Sri Lanka still are apprehended towards India's ambitions. And these apprehensions have their roots of origin in the ancient history when South Indian rulers invaded Sri Lanka. The third important aspect is the anti-Tamil pogrom, which we all know was one of the critical point in the India-Sri Lanka relationships. And we all are aware about the India's role in Sri Lanka's civil war, and because of which India had to face a lot of hatred from certain sections of Sri Lankans. Then, in the recent times, we all are aware about the continuous and regular fishermen's dispute. Now we all know that as Sri Lanka and India shares the maritime borders, there is no clear-cut demarcation of this international border, because of which several times, sometimes the Indian fishermen or sometimes the Sri Lankan fishermen unknowingly cross these borders and enter into the waters of each other countries, whereby they are reprimanded and arrested. So this dispute is also one of the biggest concerns which India and Sri Lanka relationship faces. And the last is that some of the recent steps of Sri Lanka, for example, the project related to development of Colombo port, which was awarded by Sri Lanka to India as well as Japan, was unilaterally withdrawal without any discussions. And then the China factor is also important. In recent times, it was witnessed that Sri Lanka is growing its proximity towards China, and we understand the strategic dimensions of this growing relationship. So that is why, in this regard, this article talks about the challenges as well as the potential of the sub-region of India and Sri Lanka. Nevertheless, if we are able to tackle all these challenges, we can build this sub-region into a strong economic region which can benefit not only India and Sri Lanka but can bring the peace across this whole region. Now, this topic has appeared at page number 12 in today's The Hindu Daily edition, and this topic is in relation to the Press Council of India. The latest context in which this article has appeared in today's paper is that Justice Ranjana Prakash Desai has been selected for the post of Press Council of India chairperson. In this very regard, you should be aware about certain key facts related to the Press Council of India. This topic is mainly relevant from the preliminary examinations perspective. However, its powers and limitations forms the analytical part of this very body and can also be asked in your mains examination. Or in different manner you can utilize this body as an example in your essays as well. So let us begin our discussion. We will discuss three important components regarding the Press Council of India. First is certain key facts, whereby we will discuss its origination, its foundation, as well as its structure. Second is the power, and third are the limitations or the issues related to the powers of the Press Council of India. So first of all, the Press Council of India was formed to promote the self-regulation of the press inside India. Now, as we all know that media is the fourth pillar of democracy, and media has the right of freedom of expression, thought and belief. Further, the prime responsibility of media is to showcase the reality and to hold the government accountable. But we know that the spread of that media is so large that it should be governed also, it should be regulated also. But then its regulation cannot be given in the hands of the government, because that will be the clear case of conflict of interest, And that is why this self-regulation is the key to regulate media. This Press Council of India was formed on the recommendation of the first Press Commission, which was established in 1954. In continuation of this, the Press Council of India was constituted in 1966 under its own act. That is why it is a statutory body. Further, it is also an autonomous body because we discussed that the government cannot regulate the media, and that is why this body has to be autonomous in its functioning. Further, in order to increase its power and efficiency, it was also established as quasi-judicial body. However, with the emergency period in the decade of 1970, this Press Council of India was shut down, and then in the post-emergency period, the fresh legislation was passed in 1978. And now, the Press Council of India, which stands today, is built on the basis of 1978 Act. Now we shall discuss the basic structure of the Press Council of India. This body consists of one chairman and 28 other members. The chairman is selected via the committee. Now the select committee has 3 persons in it. One is the chairperson of Rajya Sabha, second the speaker of the Lok Sabha, and third one is an independent person who itself is elected by the Press Council of India. Among the 28 members, 13 members are the working journalists. And out of these 13 members, 6 members are the editors of the newspapers and 7 are the non-editors. Then, other 6 members are those people who own the newspapers or run the business of newspapers. 1 member is from the news agency manager. 3 members are those people who have special knowledge in the fields of education, law, literature and culture. The remaining 5 members are the parliamentarians, and among these 5 members, 3 members are from Rajya Sabha and 2 members are from Lok Sabha. So this is the basic structure of Press Council of India. Now comes the powers part. Now Press Council of India has the power to receive the complaints against those journalists who has violated the media or journalist ethics. Further, the PCI can inquire into those complaints and take the necessary actions. It can summon the witness or can examine the evidences in this very regard. And the most important power given to the PCI is that all the decisions which are taken by the Press Council of India shall be final and no appeal shall lie in any court of law against the decision of Press Council of India. Despite all those powers, we witness that there has been a gross violation of journalistic ethics in daily newspapers. Many a times it has been witnessed that there is a close nexus between the people in the political authorities as well as the heads of the newspaper agencies. And this scenario has erupted because there are several limitations on the powers of Press Council of India. First and the foremost limitation is that Press Council of India, despite receiving the complaints and inquiring into those complaints, they are not provided with the penalty powers. They are also not provided with the sanction powers so that they can sanction any newspaper in case it has violated the established norms. And the last and the most important issue is that this Press Council of India holds the accountability of only the print media. That means that today's growing social media menace as well as the TV debates is outside the domain of Press Council of India. So this has to be understood very clearly. Press Council of India is responsible only for the print media. So this was a very brief topic, and in this topic we have witnessed the structure of the Press Council of India, its origination and its statutory backing. Then we looked at the powers and the associated limitations on those powers. This topic has appeared at text and the context page. This topic is in relation to the nuclear disarmament in the context of the recent report which was published by SIPRI. Now SIPRI stands for Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, which analyzes the worrying trends related to the military expenditure as well as the nuclear weapons across the world. As far as the UPSC examination is concerned, this topic is mainly relevant from the prelims examinations perspective. The latest context of this very news article is that CIPRI has released its yearbook which analyzes the worrying trends in the international security aspect. The yearbook claims that it expects to rise the global nuclear arsenal in the coming decades, despite the fact that there has been a decrease in the absolute numbers of nuclear arsenal, but still in the next coming decade it is expected to grow. As far as some of the important trends which is concerned in this context is in front of you. The report says that during 2012 to 2021, the military spending as a percentage of GDP has largely been stable. But this does not mean that the expenditure is stable. You need to read this line carefully. It just says the percentage of the gross domestic product. Now if the GDP increases, then obviously the percentage of GDP when converted into absolute terms will also increase. The percentage might be constant, but it is nothing to do with the absolute terms. Now, as far as the nuclear inventory is concerned, Russia leads the charge in the absolute numbers of nuclear inventory. However, if we compare it with the deployed warheads, then USA stands at the top position. Now, there are two things. One is having the inventory of nuclear weapons, and the other thing is that out of this total inventory, how many nuclear weapons are finally deployed. So as far as the inventory is concerned, Russia is at top. And as far as the end deployment of these warheads is concerned, then USA is at topmost position. After that, we have China having the number of nuclear weapons in its inventory as 350. Then we have France 290. Then we have UK 225. Then Pakistan, this is important, 165. And after Pakistan lies India with 160 number. Now, this report also points out one very important and interesting analytical element that despite the data suggests that USA still claims thousands of nuclear weapons which is deployed, and USA still is on the topmost position as far as the deployment of the nuclear weapon is concerned. Still, it is very interesting to know that how the global discourse has created a sense of fear around China's military modernization. Now, all the newspapers, TV debates are focused towards China's increasing military modernization and its upward trend in nuclear weapons, and no focus is being laid on the USA's inventory and its deployment. Next important data in the context of India is that during the period of 2017 to 2021, India has been the top weapon importer, followed by Saudi Arabia. As far as the top 10 military spenders in 2021 is concerned, United States with the tremendous amount of $801 billion stands at the topmost position. Again, I want to repeat that this is showing the military expenditure by the top 10 countries. It is not showing the import. When the weapon import is concerned, India stands at top position. When the military expenditure is concerned, India stands at a very low position, that is $76.6 billion. This is nothing when compared to the China's military expenditure as well as USA's. Now, the important concerns which this report has flagged is that in the recent global geopolitics, there has been a continuous clashes between India and Pakistan on the international border and LOC. The second important concern is the civil war in Afghanistan and the retreat of American soldiers and handing over the Afghanistan to the Talibani terrorists. The third important thing is armed conflict in the state of Myanmar. Then there is also a rise in the Chinese American rivalry, especially in the Indo Pacific region. Further, as we have discussed the role of Taliban in Afghanistan, this CIPRI's yearbook is very concerned regarding the involvement of the state and the non state actors in multiple conflicts. And after this, an important element is that this report also talks about the climate and the weather hazards in the upcoming period. Because of all these issues related, these yearbooks claims that in the coming decade, the nuclear arsenal is expected to grow. This topic has appeared at page number 9 and is in relation to the homosexuals. The term mentioned over here, homophobia, describes the core crux of this very news article. This article highlights the dangers of homophobia as it just not only alienates the LGBTQ community from the mainstream society but also results in the denial of the basic and fundamental rights of liberty and equality. It also goes against the constitutional values and morality, and that is why, in this very regard, we should understand what is the linkage between liberty, equality, and fraternity in the context of homophobia. Further, in today's session, we will also discuss the various issues and problems which are faced by LGBTQ community and their multidimensional impacts. In the last, we will discuss the Supreme Court judgment on Section 377, which deals with unnatural sex and homosexuality. And then we will also interpret the importance of this very judgment in the context of the changing constitutional values with times. So now let us begin our discussion. First of all, the article says that there is a close relationship between liberty, equality, and fraternity. There lies a trinity among all these three values, and one value cannot survive without the other one. Now, the fraternity is very important in this context. In the words of Supreme Court, fraternity ensures the dignity of every individual. And not only present Supreme Court, even while formulating our constitution, our founding fathers Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said that the value of fraternity acts like a safeguard against the denial of liberty and freedom. In this very line, fraternity also strengthens the value of brotherhood and commonness. But the issue is, despite having increased literacy level, education, and being exposed to all the modern phenomena, still our society is not giving the dignity and respect to the LGBTQ couples which they deserve so. In this very line, there are multiple problems which LGBTQ couples face. The first and the foremost issue is of discrimination. Despite the fact that our constitution says that there shall not be discrimination on the basis of sex, LGBTQ couples face discrimination on regular basis. This discrimination many a times leads to intolerance and even violence against those people. The second issue is in relation to the homophobia, the feeling of hatred against these LGBTQ couples in society. Even we are witness of this very fact that even today, our society is not tolerant towards the homosexuals. This feeling of hatred is many a times based on moral grounds, or some also believe that they are based on religious grounds. Whatever the grounds may be, but the issue is that this feeling of hatredness against these homosexuals is not justified. The next issue is all these things lead to the socially unacceptable identity of these homosexuals. On many social functions, marriages, as well as festivals, these people are not even invited, and which in turn leads to disturbed personal life. If we are not giving respect to these couples, how can we expect them to live a peaceful and happy life? And this in turn leads to their utmost marginalization. So, if you closely analyze this particular chart, all the phenomena, that is discrimination, homophobia, socially unacceptable identity, disturbed personal life, and marginalization, all these things are interrelated to each other and they form a vicious cycle. This vicious cycle must be broken in order to promote feelings of liberty, equality, and fraternity. And the multiple impacts of these things are that there are very high school dropout rates among this community. There are very high chances that these people will leave their home, spending their whole life in alienation. They do not get the adequate employment opportunities, which in turn do not lead to their financial inclusion as well as empowerment. There are cases of forced migration because they have to leave their home places to the host places. Further, many a times the religious texts are interpreted in such a manner that they are not even supported by their own religions. And these things can ultimately lead to a very disturbing scenario of high suicide rates. And many a time, despite knowing the fact that the person is homosexual, it can be lesbian, it can be gays, despite this fact, they are married forcefully to the people of opposite gender. And in this scenario, not only the life of that homosexual person is disturbed, but the person with whom he or she has got married is also disturbed. These homosexuals do not get any public services, even the healthcare as well as education, as we have discussed. And in the backdrop of this scenario, the Supreme Court judgment gains importance. So there was a particular section 377 in IPC which criminalized homosexuality and the unnatural sex. The part of section 377 has been decriminalized by Supreme Court in 2018. There was a 5-judge constitution bench which was set up in order to deliver a landmark judgment in Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India case. It decriminalized the sexual relationship provided on the ground that that relation must be consensual in nature. That means non consenting homosexuality is still a crime, but the consenting homosexual adults are free to live their life in their own way. This judgment has given us an important signal, as we all know that our constitution is not a dead document, rather, it is a living document. And this judgment is a proof and testimony to this thing. The Supreme Court in this particular judgment also said that the constitutional values are dynamic and timeless in nature. The values of liberty and equality must be interpreted in such a fashion that it suits the socio-economic reality of the modern world. Further, whenever there is a conflict between the constitutional morality as well as social morality, the duty of the state is to uphold the constitutional morality. Because social morality is subject to multiple factors, but the constitutional morality is objective and discrete in nature, in the sense that constitution respects certain ideals, for example, equality, liberty, and fraternity. That is why it is of utmost importance for the state as well as judiciary to uphold the constitutional morality whenever it gets conflicted with the social morality of that particular period. Further, as we all know that in Puttaswamy case, the Supreme Court also upheld right to privacy as a part of fundamental right under Article 21. And in that very 9-judge bench case, Supreme Court said that sexual orientation is also a facet of person's privacy and the right to privacy is a fundamental right. That is why Article 21 also includes right to be let alone. So even Article 21 is of the opinion that homosexuals must be given due respect because they have equal protection of fundamental rights as compared to other citizens. The Supreme Court also said that Section 377 amounts to an unreasonable restrictions within the ambit of Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. The grounds of the social morality was such that homosexuals or the heterosexuals threaten the public decency or morality. But the court said that if the homosexuals and heterosexuals are doing whatever they want to in the narrow chambers of their private space, this does not harm the public decency and morality. That is why we must understand that whether some activity is doing in public place or it is within the private space. If the activities are being conducted in private space, then how can it disturb the public decency or morality? That is why Section 377 amounted to an unreasonable restriction. So, in line with this discussion, we should understand that it is our responsibility that we should give equal respect and dignity to all the citizens, to all the people living in this country, whatever sex they belong to. Now is the time for the question of the day. The question from yesterday's DNS dated 15th June 2022 is in front of you. This question asks you to find the correct statements out of the given two statements in the context of Agnipath scheme. The correct answer to this particular question is option D, neither one nor two. The question from today's DNS is in relation to the Press Council of India. There are two statements given. Statement 1, it is a statutory body. Statement 2, It is chaired by a broadcasting minister. You have to find the correct statements out of the given two statements. Option A, 1 only, B, 2 only, C, both 1 and 2, D, neither 1 nor 2. So that's all for today. All the very best. Study hard.